Imagine sitting in a fancy hotel room in Paris. You've got a briefcase on the table, and it's overflowing with cash. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. You just finished a deal where you sold the Eiffel Tower. But here's the crazy part. You don't own the tower. You don't work for the city. You're just a guy with a good suit and a very big lie. This is the story of a man who looked at the most famous landmark in the world and thought, I bet I could sell that for scrap metal. It sounds impossible, right? But he actually did it. And he didn't just do it once. Let's go back to Paris in the year 1925. The city was full of energy, but it was also struggling. The Great War had ended a few years prior, and things were expensive to fix. One morning, a man named Victor Lustig was sitting in a small cafe, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. Victor was 35 years old, very sharp, and spoke 5 different languages perfectly. He wasn't looking for a job, he was looking for a target. He saw a small article in the corner of the paper. It said the Eiffel Tower was falling apart. Back then, people didn't love the tower like they do now. It was built for a fair in 1889 and was only supposed to stay up for 20 years. By 1925, it was rusting. It needed a lot of paint and repairs, and the city was broke. Some people in the government were even saying it should just be torn down. When Victor read that, a light bulb went off in his head. He thought, if the government wants to get rid of it, someone has to buy the metal. And he decided that he was going to be the one to sell it. But he couldn't just walk up to someone and ask for money. He had to be smart. He had to make it look official. So the first thing he did was find a guy who could make fake documents. He didn't go to a normal office. He went to a secret workshop where people made fake passports and IDs. He told the man he needed stationery that looked exactly like it came from the French Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He wanted the heavy paper, the official-looking stamps, and the fancy gold seals. He paid a lot of money to make sure these papers looked real enough to fool an expert. While the papers were being made, Victor started looking for his victims. He didn't want just anyone. He needed someone who had a lot of money, but also wanted to be famous in the business world. He went through the business records of Paris and found 6 scrap metal dealers. He spent days studying them. He looked at how much money they made, what kind of cars they drove, and how they treated their employees. He finally picked a man named André Poisson. André was a new money guy. He had a successful business, but the older, richer businessmen in Paris didn't really respect him yet. Victor knew that André would do anything for a deal that would make him the biggest name in the city. Next, he had to look the part. He went to a high-end tailor and brought the most expensive dark suit he could find. He bought a top hat, a walking stick, and polished his shoes until he could see his reflection in them. He practiced his walk in front of a mirror. He didn't want to look like a salesman. He wanted to look like a bored government official who was tired of his job. To really seal the deal, he rented a massive suite at the Hôtel de Crillon. This wasn't just any hotel. It was right in the center of Paris, and it was where world leaders and kings stayed. If you were meeting someone there, you didn't doubt that they were important. Victor sent out his letters on the fake stationery. The letters said there was a top-secret government project and invited the dealers to the hotel for a meeting. When the 6 men arrived at the suite, Victor saw him sitting there with maps and official-looking files spread across a big table. He looked up, acted a bit annoyed that they were there, and told them to sit down. He told them a lie that sounded perfectly true. He said, "Gentlemen, the Eiffel Tower is a disaster. It's rusting, it's dangerous, and the city can't afford it anymore. We are going to take it down, but we don't want the public to know yet because they'll start protesting. We want to sell the 7,000 tons of metal to one honest dealer."
The men were stunned. They were looking at the man who sold the Eiffel Tower before he even did it. Victor watched them closely. He saw how their eyes lit up when he mentioned the 7,000 tons of metal. He told them to go home, think about it, and send him their best price. The next morning, Victor took them all on a tour of the tower. Now, he didn't have any special keys or permission. He just walked up to the entrance before the tourists arrived. Because he was dressed so well and acted so confident, the guards just assumed he was the boss and let him in. He walked the dealers around the base of the tower. He pointed at rusty bolts and old beams. He talked about structural integrity and weight distribution, using big words he had memorized from a textbook. He wasn't an engineer, but he sounded like one. While they were walking, he noticed André was the most excited. André was asking about how many trucks it would take to move the metal and how long the demolition would take. Victor knew he had his man. A few days later, the bids came in. Victor called André and told him he had won. But then, Victor added a little twist. He met André privately and acted nervous. He told him, "You know, being a government official is hard. I don't make much money, and I have to live this expensive lifestyle." André understood exactly what Victor was saying. He thought Victor was asking for a bribe. And here is why Victor was a genius. André was actually relieved. He thought, if this guy's asking for a bribe, then the deal must be real. That's how the government works. So André didn't just give Victor the money for the tower. He gave him a huge extra bag of cash as a bribe. Victor took the money, gave André a fake contract with a big red seal on it, and told him the permits would arrive in the mail. As soon as André left the room, Victor grabbed his suitcase, went straight to the train station, and left for Austria. He waited in a hotel in Vienna, checking the French newspapers every single day. He expected to see a huge headline saying, "Businessman scammed," or "Eiffel Tower sale was a fake." But days went by, then a week, then two. Nothing. What happened? Well, André Poisson was so embarrassed that he had been tricked so easily that he didn't tell anyone. He didn't even go to the police. He just took the loss and stayed quiet, so he wouldn't look like a fool in front of his friends. Victor couldn't believe his luck. He had all this money, and no one was even looking for him. But Victor was a gambler. He didn't just want to be rich, he wanted the thrill. So 6 months later, he actually went back to Paris to try the exact same scam again. He got the same hotel, the same fake papers, and a new group of dealers. He almost pulled it off a second time, but one of the new dealers got suspicious. This guy went to the police, and Victor had to run for his life. He hopped on a boat and headed to America. When he got to America, he didn't stop. He became one of the most wanted men in the country. He even ran a scam on Al Capone, the famous gangster. Most people would be terrified to lie to Al Capone, but Victor wasn't. He convinced Capone to invest $50,000 in a fake deal. Then, a month later, Victor brought the money back and said the deal fell through. He didn't steal it, he just gave it back. Capone was so impressed that Victor was honest that he gave him $5,000 as a reward. That was Victor's plan all along. He used Capone's own money to get a gift from him. But eventually, his luck ran out. He started printing fake money, and the Secret Service started chasing him. They finally caught him in 1934. When they searched him, they found a key to a locker in a subway station. Inside that locker was all the equipment he used to make his fake bills. He was sent to Alcatraz, the most famous prison in the world. He died there in 1947. On his death certificate, under the section for occupation, someone wrote salesman. I guess in a weird way, he really was. Victor Lustig's life shows us that sometimes the biggest lies are the easiest to believe because they seem too crazy to be fake. It's one of those audacious scams that changed history because it changed how people looked at security and government. If you found this story about Victor and his crazy plan interesting, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps me out. Also, if you want to hear more stories about the strange and forgotten parts of our past, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. You're watching Ethereal Bygoner, where we bring the ghosts of history back to life. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.